Hello and welcome back to the My Story in Motorsport podcast, and today we are joined by Sabré Cook, who is currently racing in the W Series in 2021. Her story isn't just one of driving the cars, she's actually a very talented engineer in her own right, who was a part of the Infinity Engineering Academy a few years back, which saw her work with the Renault Formula One team. And nonetheless, let's speak about her journey in today's podcast, and I think it's worth noting that this was recorded once again in 2020, but unfortunately we did have some connection issues, which unfortunately means that the video wasn't working for the majority of this one. Just a heads up, but nonetheless, still a great podcast, and enjoy this show. So, Sabré, you're 24, you've worked within a Formula One team and raced yourself on the world stage. How crazy have the last couple of years been?
The last couple of years, I guess, it's been up and down. I graduated from university with my mechanical engineering degree, and then obviously did the Infinity Engineering Academy, and then W Series, and got into a little bit of USF 2000, USF 4, so just tried to really been trying to kind of escalate my career over the last couple of years, and as well as obviously improve my engineering career. So it's been fast paced, but I always feel like I could always do more. And so I'm looking back and I'm like, okay, well, at least I know what to do differently next time.
Perfect. And where does this all start, your love for motorsport? Is it something that's happened over the last 10 years, or would you say much before then?
Oh, no, definitely far before. I've been driving, I started driving karts. I drove for the first time when I was about 8. So it's been well over 10 years.
It's been a long time.
And then I started really racing more competitively when I was like 10. But like from the engineering perspective of motorsports, like I've always been interested in like school, math, science, and then really started deciding that I was going to go for mechanical engineering when I was like.
What was the pivotal moment for you to get into a kart? Because I guess that's quite a big moment for anyone, really.
To get into a kart for the first time, I guess it came about because my dad, he used to race motocross and supercross, especially back in the 80s. And then he found karting after he retired. And so he got me and my brother into it when we were younger, and just gave us our own karts, and had a go like when I was about 8 years old. So that was kind of my first time of driving my own kart. Previously, before that, like my dad had a shifter kart that they would drive around like a parking lot track, and he would like put me on his lap and ride me around just a couple laps in that. But that was a little like a year or two before I got my own.
And in 2008 you started competing, and over the next couple of years you won races and championships. Around that sort of time, were you getting any offers to go and race a car for the first time, or was it all focused on karts?
At that time I was still I was too young definitely to get into a car. I was still like 12, 13 years old. So
definitely.
Yeah, I think I was about 13 years old. And so it was a bit premature for that. But had a great karting career and ended up progressing, more into the national and world championship karting scene, and really enjoyed my years with that.
I was going to say, in 2012 I've got down that you dominated the SK USA Pro Tour Championship. In that season right there, how did the pressure change, being the person that now everyone wanted to beat?
It was, it's definitely, like with racing, there's definitely there's a lot of different dynamics mentally that you learn to deal with, and it's like obviously when you're learning to get to the top, and then learning how to deal with it once you're one of the ones, constantly fighting for the podium, championship, first place, all that stuff. So I dealt with it on like a smaller scale before 2012, but then in 2012 it definitely was kind of a different level. But I think I had good people around me and just tried to handle it the best that I could, and then ultimately it worked out, and I was able to secure the championship that year. So it was definitely one of the most memorable years of my career.
And in reality, that wasn't that long ago, but when does your passion for mechanical engineering start? Is it before this point? Are you already, using it to set up your karts?
I guess like I'd always wanted to ask questions ever since I was a kid, like, well, why are we doing that? Like, why does this work? And how does this work? So I guess I started to kind of look at things in that way from a younger age. And my dad and my grandpa definitely like encouraged that type of thinking and tried to teach me everything that they knew. But really when I started deciding that it was exactly mechanical engineering that I wanted to go for was probably I was probably actually 13 to 15 is when I really came into it and decided that was the career path that I was going to take.
And how was it balancing racing and school? Because I mean, you're still karting at this time, but I still assume it takes up quite a lot of your time outside of school doing, testing and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't test as much as I guess I wish I would have back in the day, but it still took up so much time. And I remember my first year of university, I decided that I could still have a completely full karting schedule and take like 17 and a half credit hours, which in the States is quite a lot. So, and needless to say, I learned my lesson very quickly that was not a good idea. But after that, like first initial semester, I just and I'd learned, since I was young, to learn to just balance the two and try and do it through, really good time management. And then also I had great teachers that were super supportive of what I was doing. So I think that really made the difference for me.
And do you think even in the early years at karting, do you think there was a segregation because you were a female, but you were still doing great? Did people look at you differently, or was it just, any other racing driver sort of thing?
No, I definitely felt like I was treated different at times, and definitely felt like I was looked at differently, which I think I'd been usually one of the only girls ever since I was a kid, so it was just kind of what I'd gotten used to. But it is kind of sad, like the fact that we can't be seen as, completely equal yet. I think we're making really big steps in that direction, and W Series is definitely helping, as well as all the women that are continuing to push forward and try and get to the top in any area and level of motorsports. So, but yeah, it was a bit different. Like I remember one drivers meeting I went. It was like the KZ World Championships in Sarno in 2014, I believe, and I went to go into the drivers meeting. And the guy that was like checking passes to go into the driver's meeting, he's like, no, drivers only. And I'm like,
oh wow,
like I just tried to show him my pass, and I just tried to walk quickly inside. But so yeah, it's definitely it's perceived differently, but you just learn to deal with it. In some ways, being a girl obviously brings a certain kind of attention to it, but I wish that it was not that way. I wish it was just okay, she did good in karting, how's she going to do it in cars now? Is she going to make the transition well or not? And just be based purely off of how I'm doing results wise and performance wise. And I'll be the first to admit my transition to cars was not what I wanted it to be at all. And I feel like I was I didn't have the money to go until a very late age, and I wish I'd kind of handled things differently and spent more time preparing, because I was just trying to get enough money together to go race, but then I had no preparation beforehand. So I think the first year and a half was quite difficult because of that.
I mean, something I like as a motorsport fan is that once you put the helmet on, the suit on, everyone looks the same sort of things. It doesn't matter what, gender, race and whatever, so on. So hopefully those stereotypes that are in the motorsport world will start to die out soon, and I think stuff like the W Series is really helping that out. But if we look at the first year you had in cars, I think, was it 2017? How did that opportunity come about?
So in 2017, I ended up doing just some SCCA racing. And it was a great platform to start out in. It came about because I actually was coaching these young karters, and their family knew that I'd been trying for a long time to get enough budget together to do a season in cars, and they happened to have a connection that they mentioned my name to, that this family and company had been involved in racing for a very long time and wanted to basically give back and had the means to do so. So they already had cars and put me in one of the cars and helped me get through the rest of that season, and still help support me today. So I was very fortunate to have that connection.
And I guess, was this around the same sort of time you were finishing up your course in mechanical engineering? So we've all been quite busy.
Yeah. At the end of 2017, I also graduated. So 2017 was a big change year for me, I guess.
And once you graduated, was there any sort of thoughts in your mind what you wanted to do? Sort of go full-time racing or full-time, in the industry?
Oh, definitely. Like I was unsure of exactly what the best choice would be, but I knew that right now is, obviously racing is age dependent. So I knew I needed to kind of commit to that now and give it the best shot that I could. And then I could always, do engineering on the side. It's not like I'm just completely neglecting that trade. Like it goes hand in hand with what I'm doing. So there's still plenty of things for me to do to continue to improve as an engineer. And, working for teams on the side as well. So I decided to kind of make the racing the main focus, and then see where it went. And then obviously I could always go into a full-time engineering position later on.
And 2017 was big, as you've mentioned here, but 2018 possibly could have even been a bigger year when you look at it, because you raced in Formula 4, F2000, as well as winning one of the places on the Infiniti Engineering Academy. If we start with the racing, what sort of pushed you to make that step and sort of go full-time for that year? Was it just that age-dependent thing, you have to do it now?
Yeah, I'd always wanted to go there. Like my goal had been IndyCar, so I knew I needed to get into the road to Indy and at least try and run a few races. And I did what I could with the budget that I had, and unfortunately, didn't get to do a full season or anything like that, and just kind of scraped it together. But it was, I learned a lot. It was not the year that I would have liked to have had. If I could have done it differently now, I think I maybe would have invested more money into going and testing rather than trying to just make it to the next race. But I did learn a lot, and it was good exposure and put me in front of good people, good contacts. So I think overall it was obviously not the best year results wise, but it was a good kind of preparation year for what was to come the following year.
If we look on the other side of 2018, obviously winning the Renault Formula 1 Academy, the Infiniti Academy to work with Renault. How did that experience, I guess, how did you start and where did you find out about it? And then how was the whole experience in general?
So for the Infiniti Academy, how that came about was I'd actually applied for the Academy back in 2015 when I was kind of a relatively only one year or so into my degree, and I did make it to the national finals that year, but I didn't win the placement because I'd obviously had a lot to learn. I was good with the hands-on stuff, but so I came back and applied again towards the end of my degree, and so there's 10 global finals. There's for the 10 different regions all over the world, and US being obviously my region. I went to the finals. There was 10 of us. We had 2 evaluation days. We had to go through engineering exams, interviews with the judges, technical challenge, a team group technical challenge, just a problem solving challenge. And then we had the second day, there was only 3 of us chosen, and we actually got to do the evaluations in the Renault garage, at COTA, during the F1 GP, which was super cool. And we had to do a technical challenge, and then we had a 30-minute media grilling. And then based off that, out of the 3 of us that were the finalists, they picked one. And so once you win, then you win a year-long placement with the Academy. And so what you do is you have 6 months at Infiniti Technical Center, and then you have 6 months at Renault F1. So I started my first stint was at Infiniti, starting in January of 2019. And so I worked in the vehicle testing department there until through June, and then I went and worked the rest of the year at Renault F1 in suspension composite design. So got to see obviously very different operations, because Infinity, there's the road car side of things, and then F1 is obviously very, very specialized. So, but it was honestly, it was one of the best years that I could have had, and I got to live with really amazing, like, diverse people. Like, I got to live with someone from New Zealand, someone from Mexico, and someone from Germany, and it was a great experience all around, and I highly recommend it to any young engineers that like want to get into to F1. And you don't have to know a ton about F1 in order to get into it. You just have to kind of kind of have the good understanding of your basics and show your like eagerness to learn and wanting to work hard and be a good representative of the brand.
So, as a part of the opportunity, is it right that you moved over to the UK? Was that quite a big change?
Yeah, so I moved over beginning of 2019, and I was living in Milton Keynes at first, which I don't really fancy Milton Keynes, I'm not going to lie. It was, I don't know, it was kind of like a weird setup. Well, there was too many roundabouts too, so that was always confusing. Yeah, it was so much fun, like, to experience it living in a different country. Like, even though obviously, I mean, England's not like massively different to the States in regards to like compared to like US to maybe going and living somewhere in like Africa. Like it was still, it wasn't like a complete culture shock, but it's still, there was so many different things, and I really, really loved like getting able to have a different perspective and going to London and like being in a big city like that for the first time, and like using the tube, which I got corrected many times that it's not the tubes, which I don't understand because there's more than one, but whatever. So it was a great experience overall, but yeah, it was different. But I honestly would have stayed this year if I wouldn't have had the opportunity to race in the States this year.
And going back to around that same sort of time, I think it was actually a little bit before, the opportunity to obviously get involved with the W Series, getting on the short list. How exciting is it for you and your family to be a part of such a historic moment in motorsport history?
Yeah, obviously I was very excited and very pleased to make it into the first season of W Series, and I couldn't be happier to obviously represent the US, and I'm really glad that I can make my family proud as well, being able to be a part of that experience last year, and I'm excited to be a part of it again this year. But yeah, it was great, and maybe one of the best parts is, well, not only did I get like finally a full season in cars, it was great, but also like meeting all the other girls, because obviously, like I said, usually we're one of the only or one of two, and so we don't get to be around a lot of other girls that share the same interests and same perspectives as us. So it was really neat to get to know all the girls that also competed.
So was that moment when you all got together for the first time, the selection process, was that quite intense, or was that just sort of kind of routine in motorsport, because everything is quite stressful, I guess?
Motorsports in general can be stressful, but the selection event was very unique, I think. I'd never been through such a thorough selection process, and because I tried to do the Skip Barber karting scholarship shootout, and I'd done like the Team USA scholarship evaluation, and those were great, but W Series just really took it to the next level. And they were very thorough in what they did. Obviously, we had, I think it was at least 3 days in Austria, and it picked apart our entire profile, like from like how we present to the media, to every single one of our driving skills, to how we work into a team, how we think technically. Every aspect was evaluated, and it was purely like ranked on how well you did relative to that, and it was like all numbers based, and it's like if you were one of the fastest, if you were in the top percentile, that's who made it through. It wasn't, some people like to insinuate that it was more political than it was, but like, yeah, I promise you, like, if I could show you the data, it's strictly like who was the fastest and who performed the best during those days, as well as the same thing in Almeria. It was always whoever was the fastest is who went through. So it was a really good process, and I think it kind of made us all better drivers to be able to go through something like that.
I was going to say, I mean, there was a bit of criticism when it was first announced, and I think once the first races got underway, everyone understood it was just great to have another series, and the fact that it was doing great for things, women in motorsport, it was, I think, great in general. But how do you look back at the first season? What would you say your highlight would have been?
My highlight would probably be, I think, the 7th place at Norrisring. I just felt really comfortable in the car at that track, and then also obviously the reverse grid podium in Assen was really great, along with the fast lap. So that was definitely the highlight of my season. But there were so many good parts about the whole thing that it's even those are the highs, but there was a lot of other things that I could have equally picked.
I did go to a couple of the races myself, and it was always just great to see how exciting they were, because even though there's only, I think, 6 rounds, there was overtakes all over the place. I guess it was quite a exciting series to be a part of, really, in that regard, because the racing was always quite spectacular.
Yeah, definitely. Like, it makes it easier when they're all, like, the cars are all even, obviously. So I think that's what makes for such close racing. And it was a great time, and obviously everyone is respectful of each other. We only had like 1 or 2 big shunts, so I think it was quite good racing, clean racing. So it was good. But which races did you go to?
I did Norrisring and Brands Hatch, and I feel like another one, but I can't remember. Definitely those 2.
Well, you can't remember the other one. The other one wasn't memorable.
I think it might have just been those 2, actually. But still, I got to watch the rest on TV, so it was a good season in general, really. And I was going to ask you what you thought about the growth over the year. Do you think more and more people were coming up to you because they realised that this is a serious thing? It's not just like a gimmick, which some people seem to think it was at the start of the year.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think everyone kind of was unsure how it was going to go. When W Series first announced, and then once we started racing, everyone was kind of like, okay, what's going to happen? And then they came out and really, they crushed it, honestly. They did such a good job at running things and making sure everything was thought through, and putting the right people in the right places to make sure that their operation was very successful. So it was really a great thing to be a part of, and I think obviously, like you said, as the series went on, more and more people were like, "Hey, like this is this is something that's legit." Like they're literally out there just racing, and it's good racing, and they're trying to just improve these drivers so that way they can go on and move on to bigger and better things. So I think everyone after the first season was pretty much. Well, I think most everyone, there's still obviously the critics, but most everyone was pretty convinced that it is something that's possible.
No, I think it is, definitely. I mean, any motorsport series is good, but the fact that W Series is promoting something so unique, I think that can only really be applauded. I wanted to take you back to Brands Hatch, because that was probably the most intense part of your season, really. Well, from the outside at least, because you needed to get that top 12 entry to get that automatic spot for next year. Did you approach the weekend any differently? Because obviously there's quite a lot of pressure there to get a good qualifying, as Brands Hatch you can't really overtake.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I went into the weekend knowing like that I needed to do well, but I think I had a steady progression since probably the 3rd race of the season, and I knew that if I just kept preparing as thoroughly as I was for the other races, and focused on making realistic goals, and only focusing on taking it completely out of the the perspective that it is part of a championship, and oh my gosh, if I don't finish here, I'm gonna not make it into the top 12. And rather having the perspective that, okay, this is pretend it's just one single race. How am I going to maximize my performance at this single race, and not try and stress about anything else? Because if I would have been sitting there calculating, oh my gosh, I need to finish here, and this person needs to finish here, and I need to do this, it's going to completely, it's taking so much energy that you don't need to be expending on something that, I can't control where someone else is going to finish. So all I tried to do was just, focus on my performance and make sure I did the best that I could.
but it all worked out well. You came through, I think, from 12th on the grid to finish 9th, which was enough to get you into the top 12. Do you remember the reaction when you were told that you were in the top 12, or was that not a natural conversation that came up?
I guess I think I knew I was in the top 12 when I came off the track, but I wasn't. I guess like I didn't want to like assume until someone told, and then I remember me and Jess Hawkins were standing next to each other, and they're like, "Okay, you guys made it," and Jess absolutely like. She was obviously very like excited and elated, so she like immediately rushed to all her friends, and I could see that she was quite happy, and I was definitely happy, but it was almost like it was short-lived, because I'm like, okay, great, I made it into next year, but okay, now how am I gonna do better next year? Because I don't want to be in this spot again, right? Like I don't want to be just making it in. So it was a stressful weekend, but it wasn't any. I don't know if it was any more stressful than the others.
I wanted to speak about Assen. You mentioned it a minute ago. Obviously, the W Series held the reverse grid race. You got the fastest lap. You were on the podium. You went from 8th place on the grid to 3rd. I mean, maybe you'd be a bit biased, but would you say it's a successful test race and maybe something they'd like to, or they should do in the future?
I think that a lot of people really enjoyed the reverse grid because it was obviously very action-packed, and I think they might try to squeeze one or two in this season. At least we can hope that they will. I don't think it will be for championship points, but I honestly can't say. But obviously it's not put in our official schedule as of right now. So I wouldn't expect them. I doubt that they would add in another championship race without announcing it beforehand. I hope they do it again, but if they do it, I think maybe it would be better to only reverse like maybe the top 10, kind of like how F2 will do that. So if they adopt that sort of platform, it might be better.
That was actually going to be my next question, whether it should be the full grid or the partial grid, but I guess reversing the whole grid possibly ignites the possibility of quite a lot of carnage, which I guess you don't really want as a sort of an organisation. So I think a top 10 or something like that would work really well. Would you like to see it part of the championship sort of races in the future, or should it just stay as sort of like fun races?
It's hard to say. Like I think it could be fun to include in the championship, but maybe have it only be for like maybe a third of the points or something like that. Obviously not like fully weighted. But it is something that's fun, and I hope they do include it again this year. In
terms of outsider racing this year, obviously you left your placement, your 1 year placement with Infiniti and Renault last year. Are you going fully on the racing as you're saying, or are you going to still try and do some stuff with some other teams throughout the season, or hopefully once we get going again?
No, so I'm mostly focusing on the racing side of things, and obviously dealing with my own personal sponsorship and managing everything on that side. But I am also working as a coach quite a lot, as well as doing some data and just some like test day engineering for like F4 teams. So it's not like full on engineering, but at least it keeps me in the game, and I'm able to keep learning as I go. So I really enjoy it, and I'm glad that I can still supplement.
Perfect. And my last question was actually about this year. Do you set yourself aims before the start of this one, or do you just have to wait and see what happens here and just hope that you get top 12 in the championship and W Series, or are you going to set yourself some firm aims like I want to be top 10, top 5?
Oh no, definitely at least top 6, 7. I think is definitely my goal for this year. At minimum, scoring points every single race. And continuing to just improve over the course of the season will be my ultimate goal for W Series.
Perfect. That was all my questions. Thank you so much for your time, and obviously good luck once we get racing again. And best of luck for the future and all the stuff that comes in racing and out.
Thank you so much.